My research was inspired by the enormous curiosity and passion I have for languages and cinema. One day, when I was watching an episode of Game of Thrones, the main character started speaking a particular language, and for the first time I stopped to think. But is the character just making up casual words, or is there a logic to it? If so, who invented this language? How did they create such a peculiar language? Could it be defined as a real language? In order to be able to answer these questions, I began to analyze, first of all, how this type of language could be identified, and it turned out that this linguistic creation had been called conlang, a term born from the union of two English words, constructed and language, coined in the US around the early 90s by a group of language creators who called themselves conlangers. My in-depth study was devoted to fictional languages or ficlang, a type of conlang created to contribute to world building, or the construction of imaginary universes within which stories take place. Among the most studied ficlang in the world are the Klingon of Star Trek, the Elvish of the Lord of the Rings, and the Dothraki and Valyrian of the Game of Thrones. I also wanted to include the Na'vi in my thesis since the movie Avatar itself was a worldwide success. Klingon is one of the very first defined forms of ficlang, created to voice the alien enemy of the famous Federation of Planets in Star Trek. They began to reason that being on another planet, it would be more realistic to encounter aliens or other life forms that rarely express themselves in their native language. It was chosen to implement entirely the Klingon language mark Okran. To this day, this idiom has its own well-defined grammatical structure and can be studied in detail in the Klingon Dictionary, published by Okran himself. From that moment there, success has been unstoppable, so much so that in 1992, the Klingon Language Institute was founded with the mission of bringing together people interested in the study of Klingon linguistics and culture, and providing a forum for discussion and exchange of ideas. Among the most popular alien languages of the day, we find Na'vi from James Cameron's Avatar World, devised by Paul Frommer. Unlike other language builders, it was from the beginning in favor of inventing a complete language with a coherent sound system and a perfectly structured grammar and vocabulary. To this end, he devised the language project a year before the casting for the film's actors. As a result, the ability to speak Na'vi became one of the requirements the candidate had to pass in order to get a role. It was undoubtedly the intention to lend credibility to this fantasy universe that was a driving force behind the creation of the Na'vi language. And a huge positive response from the audience was also the reason for its success. In order to learn this language, one can use various grammars and dictionaries written by its very fans. One of the most famous expressions is Oel Nati Kameye, which means I see you. Among the most structured conlangs in history are John Ronald Reuel Tolkien's Elvish languages, specifically Quenya and Sindari. From grammar to vocabulary, Tolkien can be said to have devoted much of his life to creating these languages and the entire world of Lord of the Rings, in addition to the success of his literary works. In the film world, the Lord of the Rings trilogy was an unprecedented success which led to the development of entire courses in the Elvish languages and gatherings of fans who used Sindarin to speak to each other. Today, the master of conlangs is David J. Peterson, linguistic of the Games of Thrones, who in his book The Art of Language Invention explains how artificial languages are in very way similar to natural ones, consisting of a lexicon, grammar, and even a tendency to evolve. When he was only 26 years old, he was selected among many experts to create the Dothraki language, for which he created more than 3,000 terms. Peterson confessed that he paid homage to his wife's name, Erin, which means kind in Dothraki. After his engagement, he was also asked to create Valyrian, an idiom spoken by the famous character Daenerys Targaryen. Very famous expression, Valar Morghulis, Valar Doeris, which means all men must die, all men must serve. The curiosity of wanting to know this word behind the scenes led me to understand the complexity of a language, but also how we identify with it. After all, when you meet a new person, from their accent or pronunciation, you can often be able to understand their origins and consequently associate their culture and traditions. So they wanted to give a reality to these imaginary peoples, who are also endowed with principles, values, and beliefs. All that is left for the audience to do is to get involved in this fantasy and make it their reality even for a short time. Thank you and goodbye. Hanna Marie, Harjas, Kievame, Quapla.